Welcome to Smart in the City, the Babel podcast where we bring together top actors in the smart city arena, sparking dialogues and interactions around the stakeholders and themes most prevalent for today's citizens and tomorrow's generations. I am your host, Tamlin Shimizu, and I hope that you will enjoy this episode and gain knowledge and connections to drive the change for a better urban life. Smart in the City is brought to you by Babel Smart Cities. We enable processes from research and strategy development to co-creation and implementation. To learn more about us, please visit the Babel platform at babel-smartcities.eu. So today in this special edition, we're diving into Ireland and many of the smart programs the Southern region is working on. And this is not only an extra special episode because of the extra special guest, but also because I have a fantastic co-host with me today from the Solar Impulse Foundation and the Solutions for Cities podcast, Alessandro Gaillard. Hi, Alessandro.
Hi, Tamlin.
Welcome onto the Babel podcast.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm very happy about the conversation that we just had. I think that the listeners will really enjoy it, and about our collaboration on the guide, but also on this podcast. And hopefully, we can keep working together on new exciting projects like this one.
So we've recorded a very interesting episode for you all together. So without further ado, let's get into that conversation.
Hello, everyone. So today we're with David Kelly, who's the director of the Southern Regional Assembly in the Republic of Ireland. My first question, David, would be, how are you, obviously? And my follow-up question would be, can you describe what the Assembly does and what it covers from a geographical point of view?
Sure, yeah. Look, hi to everyone. Delighted to be here. The Southern Regional Assembly is one of three regional assemblies in Ireland. We were established back in 2014 under the reform of the Local Government Act, which kind of restructured the local and regional structures in Ireland. We have, a pivotal role to play in two key areas. One is around regional, spatial and economic planning, which effectively translates our national planning framework to the regional level. And then it facilitates and allows for our local authorities then to align their county and local development strategies with that. We also have an important role to play in the management of EU-funded programs. So we're a managing authority for a regional program, which is funded through the European Regional Development Fund. We've been a managing authority now for almost 20 years, so we've quite a lot of experience in that, probably building up our capacity on the regional spatial economic planning side of things. Our region is, as I said, it's one of three regions in Ireland. It has a population of about 1.6 million people. It covers the southern third of the country, or about 40% of the landmass of the country. We have three of the 5 cities of Ireland are based in our region. So Cork, Limerick and Waterford. But other than that, it's probably predominantly quite a rural region. Agriculture is quite strong. Agri-tech industry is quite strong, but it has a broad industrial base, I would say, overall. It's interesting as well that we've quite strong ports and harbours as well, in that we've quite a number of tier 1, tier 2 ports in the region. So economically and dynamically, it's quite a strong region, but still very much, I suppose, competing with our capital region in Dublin. Just maybe touch on the governance piece. I think it's quite interesting for our region as well, and the regions in Ireland in comparison to maybe regions across Europe, in that the governance structure is probably less developed, less evolved, if you like. We don't have a directly elected assembly in the regions in Ireland. Our political dimension, or our board, are made up of locally elected politicians who are elected to the local level, in the local authority and local government, and then are nominated to the regional assembly. So we don't have a directly elected government of our region. So in a sense, our powers are probably slightly different to what you would experience across the rest of Europe, which I suppose it impacts a little bit on kind of how we do our job and how we implement our policies.
Yeah, that's really interesting, David. And I'm really excited to also speak with you so much because Babel and SRA, Southern Regional Assembly, we have some history together. But before we dive into some more questions, I have a little teaser to get us warmed up, as we like to do on the Babel podcast. And that's, if you were to pick any other region in the world besides the Southern region in Ireland, where would you choose to work?
Oh, God. Wow. That is an interesting
I opened it up for you.
Yeah. I suppose you can look at it from a number of different perspectives. You know, professionally, you'd probably look at it in one way. I think there are regions in Finland which I think are very interesting in terms of how they set themselves up, in terms of how they operate, in terms of I would say the democratic subsidiarity, if you like, that applies to them, and the strength of the regions. So I think from that perspective, from a professional perspective, absolutely. Maybe from a social or family perspective, I quite like Tuscany in Italy. It's a place I really like the holiday. And again, from a regional governance, the Italian regions are quite strong as well. So yeah, I suppose it really would depend on which perspective you're asking me that question.
Yeah, really interesting. So as I mentioned already, we've done some work directly with SRA as Babel, and I know how motivated you all are as terms as Smart Specialisation. And I was wondering if you can give some words on what your goals are with this whole Smart Specialisation scheme and the strategy behind that.
Yeah, sure. Look, I think the work that you guys in Babel did for us was very interesting and very pivotal as well, I would say. In Ireland, there's always been a very, I suppose, national approach to our innovation and smart specialisation policies down through the years. And look, you can understand the reason why. There's an argument for it. In a sense, the population of Ireland is quite small. It's, Ireland could be considered a region, in comparison to other regions across Europe. That being said, I suppose we still have very strong regional disparities across Ireland. And in fairness, the European Commission has always highlighted this through the semester reports, through its country-specific recommendations, and those disparities have probably been increasing over the last number of years rather than decreasing. And look, from our perspective in the Southern Regional Assembly, we've always seen smart specialisation as an opportunity or a tool to try and address this. So we've pushed quite strongly over a number of years that, okay, whilst we may not effectively develop a regional smart specialisation in its own right, we would like to see our national strategy at least taking on a regional approach to the national smart specialisation strategy. So the work that Babel did for us was to, I suppose, begin that process, and to really look at that in the context of how we could shape the national strategy, take on a regional approach, to really, I suppose, to recognise the regional differences, the regional specificities, and how we can utilise that then to really try and address the innovation capacity and opportunities that are within the region. But I suppose for us, one of the key aspects was to start the conversation, and then to see how the funding will begin to follow the policy after that. So for us, that has been a key aspect of the approach. And I suppose the key ambition for us in driving that over the last period of time.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how the SRA develops over time. And I'll stop talking now and let Alessandro also ask some questions. I know he has some important ones to ask you too. So.
No, I mean, I was really interested in what you mentioned as also in your teaser question about other regions, and you seem to know, for example, about the Finnish regions, and a lot of what you do, if I understand correctly, is connected to EU programs. You also mentioned the semester, the analysis of a territory, of all territories. But do you cooperate with other regions in Europe? I mean, I saw that in particular you're focusing on scaling up investments to improve energy efficiency. that's something that is obviously very much linked to what we do at the foundation. Is there anything there in terms of collaboration with our regions where you can maybe cite a few examples of where you've learned something from another European region, or that you're helping someone with something that you've put into place in Ireland?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, look, you're right. I mean, cooperating with other regions has been, I suppose, a core aspect of our work for quite a number of years. I suppose one thing that I've learned from, I suppose, working in this area is that nobody has a monopoly on what's the best thing to do, what's the best practice, what's the right thing to do. And there are always opportunities to learn from what other regions across Europe are doing. And it's something that we've engaged in quite strongly over the last, I would say, 10 or 12 years. Sharing ideas, sharing best practice, engaging with other regions. You mentioned the energy efficiency, and that's just one of the areas that we have actually gotten involved in directly with some other regions through Interreg Europe primarily. We were a partner in a project called Empower, which was looking at the whole energy efficiency piece in residential properties, primarily large residential properties, apartment complexes, flat complexes, and so on. So I suppose under our National Climate Action Plan, we have some really ambitious targets to try and meet in terms of reducing our carbon footprint, our carbon outputs, and this is very much so in our housing stock as well, to try and reduce that. So through that Empower project, we looked at, I suppose, various different practices across a number of regions in Slovenia, in Germany, and other regions, I suppose, at how best to not only, I suppose, retrofit the buildings, but also how do you monitor the benefits of that efficiency in terms of ensuring that you're doing the efficiency measures correctly, but also about the behavioral change piece. So ensuring that the occupants understand the benefits of it, and then how they can change their behavior to align with reducing the carbon emissions. So in a sense, it's very much kind of a smart approach, adopting a smart approach to achieving that. It's also a key aspect of our new regional program as well, in terms of retrofitting private residential units, which are probably poorly built stock, if you like, down through the years, and particularly for those that are at risk of fuel poverty. So again, it's picking up aspects of what we're learning from our partners across Europe and trying to implement that in our own work.
Yeah, I actually have a follow-up to that as well, because you mentioned one of the projects in Power, I believe. You said, do you have any other projects that you want to highlight today, and maybe some of the biggest lessons learned and different challenges associated with those?
Sure. Yeah. No, look, I suppose there's quite a number of projects that we've been involved in. I would say, look, all have been very, very successful in their own right. And we've gotten involved in projects across a whole range of policy areas. I suppose primarily to help support the implementation of our regional spatial economic strategy, and that high ambition of the greenest region in Europe, the most creative and innovative region in Europe, and the most livable region in Europe. So there are a number of different areas that we've sought to partner up with other regions to help us deliver on those. So look, I mentioned Empower. Matchup was another project where we looked at, smart and sustainable mobility transport options, which was very successful. Our Blue Green City project, which was looking at nature-based solutions to address challenges around issues in our cities and towns, and we developed a Blue Green City framework out of that. We developed a 10-minute town framework from our matchup project, but then also, I suppose, our cohesion project, which has been, I suppose, very instrumental in driving our smart agenda. It supported the work that we did with you guys around the smart specialisation, but it also helped us develop a framework for what a smart region might look like. So I think that was really, really interesting. I think, I suppose, the lessons from working with other partners and across Europe and getting involved in these projects is, I think, first of all, you have to go in with an open mind and be willing to I suppose, to share what you're doing, but also to take on board what other partners are doing. I think for me, one of the interesting things is sometimes it's maybe the small little nuggets that you pick up from an approach. When you look at the bigger picture of what they're doing, you say, well, look, we've kind of been doing that for a number of years, or that wouldn't work in our region. But then when you start delving underneath the hood of what they're doing, there are some tiny little pieces that say, that little element could really work for us. I think that's one of the things that we picked up, particularly in the context of the cohesion project around developing our framework for the smart region. So, yeah, I think the experiences are always fruitful. And there's always something to be gained through involvement in the projects.
Is there something to be lost? I don't know if that's an odd follow-up question, but I guess you talked a lot about the benefits. But is there? What are the risks? I guess
I'm not sure how to use the word lost. Look, I think there are always risks. There are risks when you're entering projects with new organizations, new partners around Europe. That look, you may not just. It may not just work well. You may not get on. There could be cultural differences. You may find that administratively, it's eating up a lot of time, a lot of resources, and the direction the project travels may not have been what you had envisaged from the get-go. So sometimes that can be a challenge. But I think overall, I think by sticking with it, I think there's always a benefit. And even if projects don't deliver what you expect them to deliver, in my mind, there's a learning in that in itself. And I think the one thing that's very difficult to measure is what I like to call the collaboration capital that you gain from working with different organizations. That may not necessarily work for the particular project you're involved in now, but there could be something there that could happen in a year, 2 years' time to say, oh yeah, I worked with that particular agency in Spain. They were specialists in how to monitor energy efficiency. We're now moving into that area. Let's just give them a call and see are they still working in that space. So I think, I definitely think there's always something to be gained.
And you mentioned, collaboration with other organizations also in abroad. But I'm always interested, in knowing how public entities work with private ones, because every time I ask this question in our episodes, in our podcast, I get a different answer. Sometimes it's a frustration. Sometimes it's a very healthy relationship between, say, the city of Prague with local food organizations, so agriculture and everything, and transport. So I'm wondering, what's your experience? And for example, when it comes, to mobility or transport or buildings, you mentioned buildings a few times. Do you see a sort of fruitful cooperation, or is it also frustrating for you sometimes where the business doesn't see the benefits that it can gain from the green transition in particular?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I suppose from the perspective where we work and where we sit within the overall structure, most of our work tends to be with other public authorities. So we're dealing at the policy level. So we deal directly with other public bodies who are directly involved in implementation. And then it's through them that the engagement happens, if you like, with the private sector entities. But I suppose when we're developing policy, we're also always and also very conscious of what the impact of what we're doing will have at the private sector level. Yes, some of the work we do involves implementation directly with private sector, but for us that tends to happen more through maybe kind of contract or procurement processes or that type of approach, rather than directly engaging with the private sector on a day-to-day basis. But I do think we have to be very conscious of what we do and how we do it in the context of that wider piece. I would say particularly around that whole, as you mentioned, that whole transition to the low carbon economy, that whole digitalization, and that whole smart agenda, I would say, because that's obviously critically important, in terms of how we do things better, how we do things more efficiently, how we do things better. And to deliver on that, you need the private sector moving with you, because we in the public sector, we can develop the policies, but we can't implement it. So I think we need to be conscious of that as we move forward.
And what would be the main obstacle, specifically in the southern region for you? Because I know every time there's a different issue. Paris had different issue. Waterloo had a very different issue. What's specific to the southern region where you think, okay, this is our biggest obstacle in moving forward in our transition or in anything else?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Look, there's probably a whole range of big issues that are impacting the southern region, and no different to any other region. I think one of the things that we're trying to address is the fact that we are quite a new region. Effectively we've only been around since 2014. It's a reconfiguration. How do people associate with our region? How do people recognize our region? How do even all of the local authorities within our region think about the region? I think historically, our cities, our local authorities, tend to kind of compete with each other, which is good, which is healthy. They need to do that. But in terms of that wider critical mass piece, there are times when collaboration makes sense. So how do we bring them all together to, I suppose, that work together and think around that in a cohesive manner that makes sense for the southern region? So I suppose because we're a new region, building up that idea around collaboration, that identity, is, I suppose, one of the big obstacles we're trying to address over the last number of years. And there's a couple of things, well, a number of things we're doing, but there's probably two things in particular that are kind of jumping out. One is trying to develop this concept around what a smart region is. And that's something that has fallen out of the cohesion project that we spoke about a while ago. And we see this as an opportunity to, I suppose, brand the southern region as a smart region and to bring all of these key players along on that journey. I would say there probably are a lot of smart initiatives taking place at local level across the region. All happen probably individually, all very good in their own right. But it's that sense of coordination across the piece that probably isn't really happening altogether. So part of this initiative that we're trying to roll out on is I suppose it's really start the conversation, get people talking about it, and get people working together and sharing what they're doing in a kind of in a cohesive kind of manner. I suppose I don't think you can expect everybody to try and do the same thing, because I think even though we are a region. There are sub-regions with sub-regional differences, and everybody needs to focus on what their priorities are. But I think that the whole sense of coming together and collaborating around it, and the sharing of their experiences in a cohesive manner, that we can say that this, we are operating towards a smart region, building on our smart cities and so on, is I think it'll be transformative in a sense, or catalytic in a sense, in terms of bringing all of that together.
Yeah, and regions really have that task, right, of bringing all the local authorities together, and we saw that also when we did a training with your assembly, and you had a very wide participation. Maybe do you have any words for other regions that are struggling with activating the different authorities, bringing them all together effectively under the kind of regional branch? Do you have any words of advice on how to do that effectively?
Yeah.
Or learnings, or
I think ours was quite effective. I think it was effective from the point of view of, I think, primarily because the topic was quite interesting. The topic was quite engaging. The topic was relevant for everybody. Like, obviously, smart cuts across everything we do. From mobility to smart mobility, from economy to smart economy, from low transition to smart low carbon transition to smart low carbon transition. So that whole idea around trying to make how we deliver our services more effective, smarter, better for our citizens. I think that probably resonated with all of our local authorities. So I think from that perspective, I think that was a really useful catalyst to bring our local authorities together in the first instance. But also, I suppose, demonstrating to them how that whole collaboration piece, that whole working together, in a region as, I suppose, heterogeneous, if you like, as the southern region, but can actually bring about potential and opportunities by working together as well, in terms of sharing experiences, but also the critical mass of the local authorities working together in trying to address similar challenges and similar opportunities. So I think there is that kind of icebreaker that's needed, if you like, to get people working together. I think when they begin to see that, we do have to compete in terms of resources, we have to compete in terms of finances. However, opportunities do exist where it does make sense for us to work together and deliver on, I suppose, the bigger picture at scale.
Yeah, and I think that's really great about the work that regions do, is providing that bigger picture. So, good work done on that. Maybe Alessandra, do you have any more questions to close us out of the main? And then I have some of our fun segment to get into too, to switch things up. So.
I was just curious to know if maybe David wanted to mention something that we didn't touch upon that he think might be relevant. I was particularly obviously interested in how because you have these cities in the region. How do they collaborate with each other in terms of in the mobility, in terms of everything that's related to transport, not only of people but also of products, et cetera, et cetera. Do you have a specific example maybe of collaboration between the cities? Because, as you just mentioned, there is this cooperation at the regional level that was facilitated by the assembly.
Yeah, as I said, that's something that we're really trying to work on, is to bring our cities closer together in terms of collaborating. And look, we think this smart city, smart region piece is a really strong opportunity for them to do that on a more probably structured, cohesive way. As I said, there is always that that good instinct amongst the cities to be in competition with each other. But having them work together on particular aspects like this, I think is critically important. So that smart region piece, I think, is going to be crucial for us, but also for them in terms of how, I suppose, how we mobilize that, how we really get the conversation started around the opportunities of collaborating and working together.
So what's the best city? Now you have to tell us.
They're all brilliant.
Okay, I'll take that.
Good answer. Yeah. You can't pick favorites.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the biggest city is Cork, right?
Cork is the biggest city in our region. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So do you see the smaller, towns kind of working in different ways as Cork does, or do you see them really on the same level?
I know, absolutely. Of course, they work differently, but they all have a very important role to play in terms of the opportunity and the potential that they have. As I said, obviously Cork is the biggest city. It has a particular dynamic, but it also has particular challenges. Whereas some of the other, I suppose, smaller towns and even rural villages play a completely different role in their areas. But there are also opportunities for them to work together, to find their niche, and I suppose play an important role. One of the key aspects of our regional spatial and economic strategy is around looking at that and how our urban centres, the 3 cities, but also our network of towns and villages play an important part in the evolution and the development of our region.
Yeah, really interesting. Do you have anything else that we didn't touch on yet that you really want our listeners to know about SRA, or about any of the work that you're doing, or any specific points?
I know we've touched on quite a lot of it. Maybe just to reiterate the whole piece around the smart region. We've done quite a lot of work on it over the last 12, 18 months. We were lucky that we were able to secure some funding through the Cohesion Project to not only do the work with you guys in Babel around the Smart Specialisation, but also to procure Maynooth University and the International Centre for Local and Regional Development to develop, a framework for what a smart region might look like. And we think this might be maybe first of its kind. It's building on our smart cities, but to roll that out to our network of towns and villages and across the region. So it's really, elaborating on one of our regional policy objectives within the regional spatial economic strategy. We're doing a launch of our smart region next Wednesday. It's Wednesday the 18th of January. So we're doing a launch of the smart region, an online launch with our key stakeholders. And we're going to be launching the 3 reports that Maynooth University did. So they developed 3 reports through 3 work packages, one around, consultation on what a smart region looks like, one looking at best practice across Europe, and then the third one then about developing what the maturity framework looks like, and then setting out a number of key steps. So they're all going to be launched next Thursday. So look, I suppose really what we're trying to do with that launch is really to try and identify what are the key next steps to, mobilize this, to build on the momentum and the energy that has been built up. So really about can we get stakeholders together to look at maybe what a co-creative vision for a smart region, for what a smart region in the southern region might look like, bringing together all of the key stakeholders that need to be there to do the mapping exercise, and then maybe looking at what what are the key priority or thematic areas that it might focus on in the first instance that might make sense for the region. I know I said earlier that because of the sub-regional differences, will obviously be slight nuances in that across the region, but I think having a number of high-level teams might make sense. And then also maybe to look at what a governance structure might look like. And that doesn't necessarily mean a kind of a hard governance structure, but just how do you keep the conversation going? How do you keep people engaged? So I think that's going to be an important but interesting piece next week. So.
Cool stuff. And I think our release of our podcast should be aligned with that also. So you'll have to watch out for the results of that.
Yeah.
Now is time for one of our classic Babel segments. And it's a segment called Flip the Script.
Flip the script. You are the one asking the questions, and I'll be the one answering them.
But today, of course, you have two hosts that you can ask questions to. So do you have any questions for Alessandro and I?
Okay, very interesting. I hadn't thought about this at all or prepared. But yeah, maybe just based on what we've just been speaking about, are there any particular hints or tips that you could give from, I suppose, other regions that you've seen across Europe, particularly around that smart region piece, what we can do to, I suppose, maybe push that agenda forward?
You want me to answer first, Alessandro? You have something? Right. Okay, you're going to piggyback off me then. Yeah. I see how this goes. Good. Based off of what you were saying, I think it's really interesting, of course, for all regions. I think in particular, the specialization is of course the topic that we've worked with you on. And I think one of the main kind of tips is this openness to engaging the local authorities on a very specific thematic topic and showing them the relevance and the importance of everything, how it directly relates to their goals within the city to really get this overall collaboration going. And I think you touched on that perfectly with the smart specialization and how the topics, really finding the topic that fits the goals and working together on it. I think it's an interesting topic as well, what you touched on with the competitive aspects, because we do see that within fighting for EU funding within cities. And I actually asked other podcast guests about this as well, of how they see this competitive landscape versus the collaborative landscape. And I mean, the overall tone is that this collaboration is competition can create some good things. Obviously, people vying to be the best, but overall, the collaboration in the EU landscape is important. So, I'm not sure if that answered your question or not, David. I'm used to be the one asking the question, so it's a tough exercise. But I'll see if Alessandro has something better.
Let's see. No, I was thinking of some of the work we do with our partners, and two examples came to mind in terms of good practices. We've ran last year and we run it again in April with the Île-de-France region, so the Paris region in France. So obviously our focus is around solutions, so clean technologies. So there are two examples. This one with the Paris region is basically we do a kind of a speed dating between local entrepreneurs who have these clean solutions labeled by the foundation and local public entities, so the cities, the region itself, obviously, but also other entrepreneurs. And what we do is we organize speed datings between both groups. So 15-minute meetings where, for example, a mayor gets to meet a technology specialized in, let's say, wind turbines for urban environments. And what we realize is that it's a lot of elected officials don't know about some of the technologies that are present in their own territory, simply because obviously they have other priorities. They can't know all the technologies that are out there. So we found that it was very interesting to basically have them talk, like they meet, they discuss, and a lot of the time it ends up in implementation. So a city is interested in one of the solutions, they come together, and that's basically what we do at the foundation. So that was one thing, is get to know your region, all the entrepreneurs that are there that have all this, from really tiny startups, but sometimes it's really big international groups. So that was one example. The second one is what we did with Luxembourg. So not a region, even if in size-wise, and I don't want to insult any listener from Luxembourg, but it's quite tiny. What we did there was a bit different. We didn't go and look at Luxembourgish solutions, but we basically brought solutions from around Europe. And what we did is we organized with the Chamber of Commerce of Luxembourg kind of a elevator pitch. So we had, I think, 20 or so solutions, and they had 2 minutes to present the solutions to more than 200 business people from the local area. And it was incredibly interesting, also led to a lot of good exchanges and meetings and future collaborations. So those were two examples that came to mind in terms of what you can do to kind of discover more solutions that can obviously help overcome all the obstacles and challenges that the southern region might have.
Great examples.
Yeah.
How was the interview spot for you, David? Was that nice?
It was, yeah. Absolutely. Would like more time to delve deeper into that, particularly the speed dating piece. I think that's it's a very interesting approach.
And we have solutions from Ireland, so there are some.
Yeah, might be interesting to touch on this after the podcast as well. I have a question for you, David. Now you're back as an interviewee now. Sorry for that, but it's a question that we ask every single guest. And I'm also very interested to hear your response here, coming from the smart region perspective. But the question is to you: what is a smart city?
Yeah, interesting question. I think a smart city is one that works well for its citizens, that improves the quality of life for its citizens, so that the services, our decisions are taken effectively, clearly, services are delivered well, quality of life is good. So if it works well for the citizens, to me, that makes it a smart city, because everything should be about improving the life of the citizens.
Is it same for smart region?
I think so. I think so. Mm-hmm. I think the very same principles apply. If you're not doing it with and sometimes the word citizen kind of implies something different. I think it should be more the people living there. If it doesn't work for the people who are living there and involve them to make things better, well then, why are we doing it?
Very good. I think that's a lovely note to end on. What do you think, Alessandro?
It's perfect. Positive, optimistic.
Yes, I like leaving it on that note. Thank you so much, David, for taking the time today. It's really been a pleasure to learn more about your way of thinking and how you plan to bring the region forward. So,
thank you. No, I enjoyed that. Really good. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. And we hope to see you all next time. Thanks to our listeners for getting to experience this new format with us, with the double host that you had today. And I also want to invite everyone to take a look at the Solutions for Cities Guide by Solar Impulse Foundation. And Baba was a partner there, and that's really how we started our work together. So please take a look. We'll link it in the show notes and everything. And thank you so much.
Thank you all for listening. I'll see you at the next stop on the journey to a better urban life.